Okay, are we all back?
Justin, you want water?
Okay, we're all back from executive session at 7:37. Moving on, Parks and Recreation, River Road Park presentation. You want to? Larry?
Yep. So I'm Larry Ernst from the Parks and Rec Commission, and we've got the Parks and Rec Commission asked a subcommittee of Charlie Rosa and Jim Tornatore and myself to look at enhancement proposals for that, and brought that back to the commission, and they recommended we bring that to the Board of Selectmen. So I want to go over the park overview. We want to talk about this access driveway that's a significant problem. The deterioration's occurred, some enhancements, proposals, and then some projected cost and proposed timing for doing that. So first, the park overview. It's located on Lake Zoar, right near where 84 and Pomperaug River come together. It's located on River Road in the area, and this is the contour and the tree line map that there are significant amount of lines. You can see these lines are close together. This is quite steep, and then down to an area that's flat area that's really the park area in this area. That's 2012 aerial photo of it. And view from 84 is a little dark, and a little closer view from the bridge on I-84 looking back at the park. That's the overview. In terms of this access driveway, even in December of 2014, it was in fairly tough shape, and it's a fairly steep drop there. So it was never used, or in recent years anyway, never used as a way to get down to the park for the general public, but was used for emergency and sometimes by the employees that at one time were in there to monitor the park. And this, again, from 2014 was in rough shape then. It's gotten worse. This is 2017, and much of it's gone away now. So that access road is essentially gone. This is from the top looking down in 2014, and 2017, much worse. The parking area is up on River Road. Again, back in 2014 was sort of rough area. It was paved sometime in between there in 2016, but without the barriers at the end of it that are now there to block traffic from, or parking from beyond the area that is right across from the park. And then the barriers in the foreground are for the bridge construction that's going on. Broken gate at the top of that access road, again going back to 2016. And on the north end of the park, broken fence was broken back in 2014 going down the hill, and then would end at this culvert that had no fence by the culvert, and that dropped from here to here about 10 or 12 feet. This was back in 2016 looking south in the park, which south is upstream. If you remember the GIS photo, the river takes a turn, but anyway, south is upstream, then heading south along there back in 2016. There was back in 2014 a playscape, and you can see the horseshoe pit, and then that portion, the steady portion of that was removed before 2016, and the swings were left at that time, but they've been removed now. And then the grills that were there, all that's been removed. This is on the south end then looking north. There was a volleyball court here. There's a post here for one side of the volleyball court, and then this was a grass court. There were horseshoe pits that were down there. again, the swing set is still there. And then in 2016, going farther back too, when you got to the southern end, you can see in this picture a little bit of a path. You can see it better on a closer up view. And this brush is here, and then people were using that as a latrine area back in the behind the brush. Today, looking from the top of that hill going down, it's not been mowed. The brush is there. That's the broken fence, which good news is it's covered up now, but it's covered up with brush. This is at the north end, and again, then looking south, that's in late August this year. This looks like there's a tree down, which I believe is still there today, and there's a fair amount of trash and debris. There's a charcoal pit on the ground that people are still using that area, but you know, not cared for. This is then looking north on there, and like I said, the park is still used. People come in by water, or people come down the road, but use. So that's a deterioration over the year. Then we want to talk about some proposed enhancements that the commission would like to see. First, in terms of just cleanup enhancements that remove the trash that's down there and cut the grass, trim brush back, remove the fallen trees and plant grass in the bare spots and repair the entrance gate, and then put a sign up at the entrance that says it's River Road Park, and include, like we do on all the parks, Southbury residents only on that sign. Now, one of the things, before we move on to short-term enhancements, I'd like to show you. So this is a drawing that was done in 2009 by Dimer, and it maybe is easier to see the actual drawing from here. But one of the difficulties is that that road that is very steep. Dimer's designed a road that comes down here, goes with some fill in this area and drainage put in, and then a road that goes along the same contour as the hill, or across the contour of the hill, and then would end up with 21 parking spaces down at the lake level. So that's a proposal that's been put together by them. And the commission's proposal would be to put that easy access road in and the parking down by the lake, and then a guard shack up at the entrance, up at road level, that one of these portable classroom kinds of things that can be put up at the entrance, and then fund park attendants for the summer months, on the weekends and the holidays. Put a porta potty down at the lake level now that that road is in there and the parking space is down there. Fix the fence that's at the south end and block that south end that the people have used as latrine area. Add some picnic tables, some grills, and a used charcoal can so they have a place to put it. Put the volleyball net back up in the grass court, and signs of swim at your own risk, and marker buoys of no wake swim area. And then put in this emergency boat launch. That's a suggestion by one of the commission members that if there's an accident in that area of the lake, it's a long ways from either the north or the south end of the lake to get to there. You can put in an emergency boat launch, not one that's used by public, but just an emergency boat launch that in the case of emergency, you could launch a boat right there. In terms of long-term enhancements, then we propose to take that same facility and fund the park attendants for all week during the summer months. Add permanent restroom facilities down there with a septic system, which Dimer says can be done. Replace the fencing, add a pavilion down at lake level, playground equipment, and a beach volleyball court where you take the existing grass court, dig down 2 feet, add sand in, and make a beach volleyball court. Horseshoe pits, bocce ball court, and a dock into the Pomperaug River. Put sand in the beach area to re-sand that, and a floating platform in the swim area. So those are the enhancement proposals. In terms of projected costs for the cleanup enhancements, the most of that work could be done with an Eagle project or help with outside properties to remove the trash, cut the grass, trim back brush, remove the fallen branches and trees, and plant the grass in the bare spots. And then in terms of capital costs, we estimate about $3,500, which could come from the discretionary fund that the Parks and Rec Commission has to repair that entrance gate and put a park sign at the entrance. That would be the cost of the just the cleanup costs. In terms of the short-term enhancements, the big nut is that easy access road and the parking down at the lake level, and that Dimer had estimated it to be $228,000. The emergency launch, once that road was in, just to add the launch, so we have emergency launch down there, $10,000. And the fixtures we had talked about with the table and the grills and courts and the buoys, that kind of thing, another $6,000. And Dimer had suggested that 10% contingency on any of those estimates, so a total of $268,000. And in terms of long-term enhancements, the restroom and septic, again, these are Dimer's estimate, $40,000 for permanent restroom and a septic system down there. Beach volleyball, $25,000. The activity facilities for the bocce ball court and the horseshoes and that kind of thing, $15,000. Playground equipment for, just minor playground types of stuff, $20,000. A pavilion, $24,000. Boat dock, $40,000, and again, contingency of an amount for a total of $180,000. So those are the projected costs. In terms of the commission's desire for proposed time, and in terms of cleanup enhancements, we'd like to see the park open again for this summer, for the ready for the summer of 2018. Short-term enhancements to fund that and be ready for the summer of 2020, and then those long-term enhancements to proposal to implement that over a 10-year period of time from 2020 to 2030, that they don't all have to be done at once, can go in as we see fit. So that's the presentation. Gone over. Any questions?
Any questions from the board?
I was part of the steep grant that the town applied for back in 2009, and I think we got something like $225,000 to redo the parking at that facility, but that was later repurposed for the basketball courts, and rightly so. I see that active all the time. There's a question that's come up in the strategic planning task force about who owns the park. Is it town property? Have we confirmed that it is town property? There was some talk that it was First Light property. So I just wonder if we've established who technically owns it. I love the idea of the waterfront. I think we definitely should be capitalizing something as good as that we have in our town. But again, we should make sure that we own it.
That we own it?
Yeah.
Do we own it?
Do we know?
I am not sure.
Okay,
Yeah,
we don't own it. It's First Light's property. That's.
We have an easement.
There's no easement. They allow for activities if it's agreed upon, what you're going to put in, what you're going to do. So that's one thing. The total cost of the project is $450,000. We had some issues down there in the past.
Right.
And it is open for passive recreation, just like all of First Light's property is. That you can walk it, you can fish it, you can, you can't, you're not supposed to have fires on it. There's not supposed to be any campfires on First Light's property, is my understanding. So, you have to, and the insurance companies, when I talked with them, there's some issues with swim at your own risk. The problem is you're assuming people are swimming there anyway. So we know how that ends up in legal terms. So there's some other issues with that. And then you get into the maintenance side of this. Your playground maintenance, we're maintaining our playground swing sets, horseshoe pits. There's certain regulations that go along with that. Parking has to be monitored, and you'd have to do it probably by permit, to control, to control it, and you'd have to be coming in with a permit, much like people going to our, and the only thing you could really restrict is the parking. If you, that's the only thing you could restrict. So if someone was to walk in from someplace else, you technically could not let them in. Right, it's the parking you have to control for the access to it.
When you say First Light owns it, are you talking about the entirety of what we were looking at, or are you talking up to a certain line?
Up to a certain line, which, do we have that elevation? I think, do we know, I want to say, don't hold me to it, 210 elevation? So when you go back to
You got
the
it.
other,
Forward.
the
Oh,
picture.
What they were showing us, walking around with.
So I don't know if you have that elevation there on that map, because I was on inland wetlands when this was approved on it from a wetland standpoint. That's about the only thing you'd really own on the park is the parking lot. You could restrict do you know what the elevation, where the 210 elevation is on that?
Who commissioned the, you said the DIMAR study was done in 2009, their work? Was that did the town?
Mark Cooper did that. Mark Cooper did
So-
that,
so-
and then we applied for the
So the
steep
town
grant.
had it done, we applied for the grant. What agreements are currently in place between the town and First Light with respect to
None,
use of the property?
none.
Right, so maybe we start with a partnership to see if they're interested in a partnership, if we're even interested in a partnership.
I guess, a bigger question is really, I know we're sharing this with them, but who's liable? If we're
That's my
liable, I mean,
next
it says in all of our publications that this is a parks, for South Lake Parks. So somebody goes down there and something happens, oh, no, it's not our park now? You're
Right,
like,
it's
so-
not it's,
Officially,
Well, I don't know, if it's not ours, and we shouldn't be advertising it as a South Lake Park.
If it's not ours, we should not be saying it's ours.
absolutely.
right.
But is that, are we sure that that's, I think we really need to confirm
just know it
that.
came up.
And confirm where the line is and who owns what, and,
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure, we can, we've got a long meeting ahead of us.
right. Are we sure there's no easements, or,
No.
no, we're
You
not
can use
sure?
it if, there's no agreement with First Light. This was actually down there long before, and if you remember when it got busy down there, there was concern, and our insurance company was concerned. And there's a difference between open space, passive recreation, and what is a park under the control of the town. Different levels of expectation. So I think, I'm not sure where that, can you see that?
I mean, I can see the 110, but it's not labeled.
Right, the 120 is up here, but this is with the fills, so I don't know if it's current. So I think it's,
At a 100-year flood elevation, you put all the improvements
Underwater.
which is, yeah,
proposed improvements.
yeah, the proposed. So if there's information that the board is looking for on that, why don't you just shoot me an email, and we'll get that for you, and
Well, thank you for your efforts. I think we need some answers before we can proceed.
Yeah, I mean, I think before we agreed to do anything with the park, we want to confirm that, because if the town has no interest in the park and we don't own it, then I don't know that we want to be exposing ourselves by inviting people to it, by making it a more inviting place.
It's in our brochure.
Right.
Because if the town starts spending money on it, and the town starts cleaning it up, and starts saying, hey, look, we did this park, we're now sort of taking responsibility for
Exactly.
something
Well,
that,
we really should make it clear, because people are using this park, they're making, the places where we took out the grills, they're using those for garbage dumps, and inside the trees, they're finding ways to make it useful, and we either get on it or get off of it.
Does anyone know the last time that this park was maintained? Like, who put all that stuff there?
It was made, I'm sorry, it was made.
We removed, I think, last.
No, I know we removed stuff, but who put that stuff in? Was it the town many, many years ago? Was,
Yeah,
Can I just say something?
Charlie, yeah.
You know,
You can, you come up, you have to come up.
I think it needs to be investigated, but at one time, Southbury Athletic Association was said to own that property. I know they used to have their own association and sponsor sports, and they used that for themselves. And they used to have the boat races there every year.
Do they still exist?
No, but, and they gave it to the town at some point, probably, I want to say 40 years ago. Okay, but prior to that, when we first moved here, Southbury Athletics Association owned that property.
I've had folks tell me that that used to be called Southbury Beach. Is
Well,
that
yeah,
true?
before we named it River Road Park.
Yeah, and they were asking me, well, why can't we open Southbury Beach again? I didn't even know what the guy was talking about.
Well, it was open before, you know, until sometime in the 80s. We used to use it, you could get a pass to use the town beach. You automatically had a pass to the town beach if you had a pool pass, but you could buy just a pool pass.
But this was the town beach, you're saying?
Yes, and you could buy just a beach pass, but you automatically got it if you had a pool pass. And we also sold boat stickers for people that wanted to come in by boat.
We had paid staff manning it.
Yeah, we had lifeguards.
It was a
now.
big deal,
We-
from what I heard,
It's a
yeah.
big
And
deal.
now it's
Yeah,
like,
it was.
And there was
It was
active.
to me, it's a valuable piece of property, and like I said, you know, it needs to be investigated who owns it, but it's a beautiful spot, and, you know, and I think it can be controlled, Jeff. You know, and I don't know if I'm right on this, but I think you could also have, you know, like we had the passes to the beach.
The
and-
only thing that can be controlled is if it's town-owned property, parking lot, the parking can be controlled. Other than that, it's open to the
Well,
public.
I mean, they've had cases with the beaches in these other towns, and you can charge a different amount for non-residents that you can for residents, so I
Right,
think you
right.
can
But you
control
need
it
to
that way.
control it
Exclude
through the
them,
parking.
right.
Only through the parking.
So
I'm
we
not-
need
I'm
to
not
find
sure.
out who owns it. That's the first
I've
step.
spoken with the town of Roxbury, that's how they control it. They have no parking on the road, nobody can park on the road. If they want to park in the parking area, they have to have a parking pass that they need, you can get, it's for, whether you're from out of town or in town, you can go to the town hall and get the pass, to have the parking pass to park on that property.
I think we need to investigate that, though, because
I
there was a case
have.
down in Greenwich where they were keeping people out of the
Awesome.
beach, and somebody was, you know, walking in and riding a bike in, and they found out that they couldn't keep them out, but they can charge them more than they charge the town resident to come in, and that wasn't a parking
Because it is
situation.
First Light's property.
Well,
We need
I
answers.
understand that, but you also have Jackson Cove is, you know, First Light property too, which the town of Oxford is using, so I mean.
Right.
So I think there's a way to work it out, but like you said, it needs to be investigated.
I mean, we should really see what's on the land records and what agreements may or may not be there. I mean, it's a simple title search. Try and figure out where that's at. Because it seems like, I mean, it's strange. It seems like historically the town has used it as its park, has improved
Maybe
it,
there's
has
some oral
charged
agreements.
people to go there and, you know, it's sort of, you know, abandoned it over the years. So before we get involved, I think we
Much
should
like
figure out
putting
the
a
legal
dock
rights of the
onto their
parties.
property, you can get a permit for a dock if you go through the wetlands and then you go through their approval and you get an approval for, but it is on their property and you have to get their approval. So they can do that, and they have essentially said, yes, if you want to do that, that's fine. If you want to create the park down there and use it as a park, you can. We pulled everything out of there because the problem was insurance purposes. There was a lot of non-conforming equipment down in that area. So, you know, we had to pull it out. And because of and we put no parking signs up the road because of the amount of people that were in that, parking on the road and clogging the road and using the park. I mean, it was overflowing.
It's
So,
been pretty congested. at
Essentially,
times.
what you would have to do is you're looking at a $450,000 project, to get this up and running.
Well, that's really a secondary question. You don't have to do the whole project, you don't have to do the whole project today, like, so.
Creating access is
you know,
part of it.
Once we figure out the title issues, and if it's something we wanted to, look nice, you could certainly clean it up, as for starters. But I think there's some unanswered questions as to what the status of it is.
Another question in my mind is, and maybe nobody else cares about stuff like this, but what's the water quality like? I mean, is it safe to swim? I wouldn't let my grandson swim in that water, but maybe everybody else is okay with it. I
I
don't
think
know.
at times it's safe to swim, at times it's not, and
There you
the
go.
health department would monitor that if we were using it. They're not monitoring now because we told them we're not using it.
Right.
It would have to be monitored, and it would have to be, when the water quality wasn't there, you'd have to make sure people didn't swim. If it's not a park and it's open space and passive recreation, and people go in, that's their choice up and down the lake.
Yeah, and that's already done at Kettletown State Park and at the park in Oxford. So, and there was a couple weeks this past summer where the algae level
Blue algae,
was
yeah.
such that you couldn't swim.
So where are we? What are we suggesting?
I'd like to see the line of what we do and don't own.
Yeah.
To me, that's the most crucial aspect.
So can we have a title search done?
No, let's get the topographicals, and we have that. We don't have to do a title search. We can,
As of now,
I don't
Well, I
have to
think,
hear with me.
well, I think we also
Maybe
want to
First
see
Light
what rights exist of record on the land records. I mean, there
Yeah.
could
What
be
easements may have been
easements, there could be
granted?
agreements recorded, there could be
Yeah,
various,
Brian
I don't
might
know.
have one. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
They
yeah,
may have done
he's-
that.
You'd be surprised what you find around title on lakes. It's,
Yeah.
it gets interesting.
yes, it is.
I would think, it's the same as for all the homeowners that are on the lake, because if First Light owns the rights to the whole lake, so, there's gotta be something where, if somebody has ownership of a certain part of the land up to the water line or something.
Like I said, I think it's the 210 mark on that is what they own up to, which is up to, I know that.
Some houses are a lot closer than the 210.
I can't help
so
where
I
the
don't know.
houses are or where they have been. At this point, they own to the 210 marker, and they've said that. And if you look at it, it's almost up to the road.
We looked
So-
at this a couple of years ago, and I recall that same situation where what the town owned was just a little sliver along the road, and the
Correct.
rest of it was First Light.
Let us get some more answers
Let's
Sure.
nail that
and take
down.
it from there.
Okay,
All
thank
right.
you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thank you.
guys.
Thank you. Arthur?
Three or four
Raise
things.
that?
Sorry?
You want to raise that up?
Oh, yeah, maybe.
You want a table?
There we go.
Thank you. Okay. First off, since there's update on state issues, as I'm sure you know, we have a deficit building in the budget, which was adopted a couple of months ago. It's $240 million. It's been growing, not dramatically, but it's been growing steadily, and eventually will have to be addressed, probably not until we get into regular session in February. Another thing that happened with respect to the legislature that is of particular interest to people in Southbury, not directly affecting the board so much, is that legislation was, as part of the budget, that changed a program for what's called the Medicare Savings Plan. It affected potentially as many as 1,000 people in my district and 700 or 800 maybe in Southbury. We put legislation through that repealed that, delayed everything at least until July 1st. The governor vetoed that legislation, which means that we're going to go back in a special session in January, on 29th of January, to override the governor's veto. Legislation passed by such large margins that it was a veto-proof piece of legislation, but he vetoed it anyway. A couple of other things, obviously new things that have hit the headlines and that may be of interest is that there was a lawsuit that's been pending for a very long time The Connecticut Coalition for Justice and Education, you've probably read about it in the papers. 14 months ago, Judge McCousher said basically the ECS formula for the state of Connecticut was unconstitutional, and we had to write a new one and redistribute money in a different way. The state Supreme Court overruled that decision, basically saying the state is allowed to continue funding education in the way that we have been doing, and so that puts it squarely back in the legislature as to exactly how we're going to fund educational funding for local education. It was a 4-3 decision, and an earlier decision on this case by the Supreme Court as to whether or not the plaintiffs would even be allowed to go forward with the case was what they called a plurality decision. So it's been adopted, it's become the law. It's possible it could be re-argued and maybe changed, but that's extremely unlikely. But still, it was a 1-vote margin. In other words, if one of the judges on the Supreme Court had voted the other way, we might have a very different kind of discussion about the issue of local funding of education. But it does appear like that issue is off the table right now, at least of having a judicially mandated change in how we fund public education in the state of Connecticut. Let's see. There were a couple of questions that came up. I appeared in front of the strategic planning group, and there were some questions that came up, and Selectman Naylor and John Monteleone are going to get an email kind of detailing this, but I just wanted to address some of those questions because there was some coverage of them, and I think people were watching on TV maybe, and I just wanted to answer some of the questions with a little bit more certainty than I was able to last week. Somebody asked a question of how many people are at the training school. It's 209. And another question was what percentage of the facility is still being used? And it's out of the original 42 residential buildings, 12 are currently being used, and another 18 are being used for day programs, offices, maintenance, and that sort of thing. So a pretty substantial amount of the facility is still being utilized. And the question was asked about closure plans, and I indicated that as far as I knew, there was no plan. There is no active plan. Obviously, as the population declines through people moving out or dying, it gets closer and closer to zero, but it's a long time before we get there. And in fact, I don't believe that there's any likelihood that the training school is going to be emptied out or closed or anything like that for at least 4 or 5 years. At the earliest, I would say 5 years. And somebody asked the question of how much does it cost to run the training school? I wasn't really sure because I obviously see a lot of different numbers related to it over the years. Right now it's about $60 million, of which we get $37 million back from the federal government. So the net cost to the state is relatively small considering the total cost of the facility. And we would still experience a lot of this cost if all of these folks were in the community and the buildings were emptied out. I think that was about it. Well, one other thing, a couple other quick things. They're not directly state, but it's something that cropped up at a COG meeting, and I went to the Western Connecticut Council of Governments, and I assume the Naugatuck Valley one is going to be contemplating some of this stuff. They were talking about trying to adopt a plan similar to what I've heard is being done maybe in New Jersey and California, of creating 501c3s. People would then donate to them so that they could get more of a tax deduction because your property and state income tax deductions are being capped off under the new federal law at $10,000. So there's a lot of discussion about, is there a way to enable people to donate money to pay for government services and then be able to take the charitable deduction if they are the folks who are going to itemize going forward. And the first selectman of Ridgefield said that he's been exploring that with his attorneys, Cohen and something. So I don't know if you want to wait until they, Fox, something like that.
Free advertising.
Anyway, one of the things that in order to make this work at all would be required and something is apparently an abatement, because right now the Board of Selectmen in Ridgefield at least has the ability to abate taxes for railroads and very poor people, but not for people who are making donations to 501c3s that are designed to pay for things like schools. So that's something they're asking us to do by way of a change in law to enable whoever it is that's the authority within the town that's allowed to do abatements like that, to add another thing to the list, which would be for 501c3 donations. It would have to be carefully scripted so that it doesn't cover a lot of other things, but aimed at trying to deal with the changes at the federal level as far as what's deductible and what's not. So there was a lengthy conversation about that that cropped up at this meeting that I went to this morning. And this is the first that I've heard about there needing to be a change in state law to enable localities to try to do something like this about this whole abatement thing. Let's see if I have anything else.
That sounds like a IRS quagmire.
Yeah, and one of the things that we probably should do, instead of having 169 towns get 169 opinions from 169 law firms, which probably are not all going to say exactly the same thing, we should probably get the Attorney General to tell us what he thinks we can do on this score as individually as a state, as a set of policies to try to deal with this thing, since everybody's going to want to try to figure out a way to do this. Although one of the things that cropped up is that in some parts of the state, where taxes are much lower than they are in the western part of the state, people aren't terribly concerned about this. This is not a big issue. So that they're going to take the $24,000 standard deduction and be very happy about that, and they're not going to be concerned about not being able to deduct the property taxes in various towns in other parts of the state because the taxes are lower than what we have around in this part of the state, where it's more of an acute issue. But still, I would like to think that the AG will, or someone, will make a decision or do enough legal analysis and get to an opinion that everybody will accept, and not have, your lawyer says one thing and my lawyer says something else, and that kind of situation.
Two lawyers not saying the same thing?
Unheard of.
Shocking.
Any questions?
Any questions from the board? Thank you,
No,
Arthur.
thank you so much.
Thanks, Art.
Okay, next is our public comment. If anybody has any public comment, it's limited to 3 minutes. Come up and state your name.
Ed Edelson, 609B Heritage Village. I think everyone in this board has always spoken out very positively about the need for transparency, and I think it is important if we're going to have a democracy. So I wanted to share some concerns. I went on the website today to look at the materials for tonight's meeting, and as of this morning, there was just the agenda. There was none of the materials. By late in the afternoon, I saw the materials were out there. But knowing that most of you work and other people work, it would be nicer to have that material earlier on. We used to try to have it out there by Monday. But of more concern was that we've got an important topic tonight of fracking, and there was nothing about what that discussion would be like or what would it be about, so that there was no information provided if there is a draft ordinance or what it is that you might be looking at. And of even further concern is the Spruce Brook Bridge. All that was there as of about 4:30 this afternoon was a memo to the first selectman. There was no bidding matrix to show who the bidders were. There was nothing to indicate that the first selectman had signed off on that. This is all part of the process and procedures that were agreed to after quite a lengthy discussion of our procurement policy back in 2014. Chad Landman, John Riley, Carol Hubert, Bill Sorosky, myself, we worked on this for quite a bit of time. We eventually had the internal auditor help us with more policies and procedures that were approved by the Board of Finance. And one of the key things was to make sure that when this board approves a particular bid, they know that the first selectman has reviewed that and has signed off on it. And the way to do that, we'd agreed to before, maybe a new procedure's in place, I'm not aware of it, is that on that bidding matrix, it would be signed off by the first selectman, and that would be what went in the file. Again, I don't know if the policy has changed, but I think the overall intent still needs to be there, that before this board votes tonight on a project that, I don't know, what's it, 20 years it's been around? I mean, it'd be really good to see this project. Yeah, I mean, it's a bizarre project in and of itself. But still, $1.8 million is $1.8 million. I don't care what the funding source is, this board has a responsibility to make sure when you approve it tonight, you know that those bids have been thoroughly reviewed by the first selectman as a key responsibility to make sure money is well spent. So again, I think we all agree, if you're going to have good government, you need good information and you need transparency. We can do better. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I would like to add on a separate subject, going back to the town beach, which we called a park because we didn't want it to be a beach. If you look on GIS, it's one of several parcels that has no ownership.
Thank you.
So no one seems to want to say they own it.
Any other public comment? Any other public comment? Any other public comment? Seeing none, we'll move on to the first selectman's update. So I thought it was important to kind of bring you up to speed. I know a lot of politicians talk just before the election, talking about what they've accomplished, and it's been about 2 years. When looking back, I do have handouts for everybody in the press. When looking back over the past 2 years, it's clear that many great things have been accomplished. I believe the record and the progress made stands for itself. My intent is to provide the Board of Selectmen and the public at large a clear vision of where we have been and where we're going. Good governance, transparency, efficiency, and fiscal responsibility were just 4 of my goals when taking office. I believe that they continue to be achieved through a lot of very hard work. The town is very fortunate to have great many dedicated volunteers as well as town employees whose goal is to make Southbury the best it can be. All of our boards, commissions, and committees work extremely hard, and their commitment does not go unnoticed. The following is a partial list of highlights and accomplishments achieved over the past 2 years. There were 6 department heads have been hired: Park and Rec, Senior Services, Public Works, Tax Collector, Animal Control, and Town Clerk. There's been 1 vacancy at the moment from a department head, Fire Marshal, and an intern Fire Marshal has been named. Deconsolidation of the Senior Center, Social Services, Park and Recreation. After careful thought and input from all parties concerned, the rebuilding of these departments is ongoing. Transportation at the Senior Center has been a major concern. After a lot of effort, a solution was found and has resulted in a more efficient system. New software has been implemented at the Senior Center. This has resulted in lower costs and a more user-friendly platform. Hiring of 2 interns to complete projects that have been discussed for many years and never completed, the tax abatement study and a policies and procedures manual. Library staffing, which has been an ongoing problem, appears to be resolved. This was accomplished by refining job descriptions, restructuring of personnel, and clarification of the organizational chart. This has resulted in what seems to be better morale among the staff. Resolving ongoing issues in the library basement. Resolve the recommissioning of the boilers at the library, resulting in a much lower cost to the town. And on that point, recommissioning of the boilers was brought on by the concern of some people that the boilers were not going to make their expected life cycle and needed replacement. The boilers were found to be in fine shape and are expected to make their expected life cycle. Hiring of 6 new police officers under an independent system that streamlines and makes for transparent hiring processes. Policing designed for our community. The hiring of the police, it was found that the hiring of the officers was essentially being left to the former sergeant resident trooper. The town was very low on officers. My administration made difficult decisions to stop any hiring and develop a transparent process that has led to the hiring of 6 new officers. Those new officers are geared towards our community policing and the type of town we are. Replacement of security cameras at the police department has been accomplished. That's been an ongoing thing for security. Cleared up issues surrounding the resident trooper overtime that was out of hand. Reorganizing the transfer station for a better traffic flow for residents, along with increased recycling. We're now doing the mattresses, which is nobody ever thought we recycled so many mattresses in this town. Completion of the redesign of the town website. On legal issues, we settled a long-standing lawsuit pertaining to tree cutting on town property. We've settled a Teamsters contract. Negotiated and finalized on ongoing matters surrounding the sale of Heritage Village Water Company to Connecticut Water, resulting in funds being set aside for benefit of Heritage Water residential customers in need, money for the PRWC to study the water flow in relation to the aquifer, and a 5-year rate freeze. In addition, the agreement came with the condition that no water be transferred out of our area of responsibility through the interconnect. However, 500,000 gallons can be brought in through the interconnect. This agreement also intends to remove Swanwick Power Plant as a priority customer. The Heritage Village Water Company merger with Connecticut Water was a very fast-paced, difficult issue to be resolved. But in the end, one of the greatest outcomes of this was securing our aquifer. That's essentially, in the end, that was the most important thing, was to me, was to secure our aquifer, and I think we've accomplished that. Implementing a memorandum of understanding between the town and the Basketball Booster Club, straightened out issues with the banner program at Ewald Park, which never had been addressed before. Next is the defined contribution plan issues. The original plan was never approved by the Board of Selectmen. We've been working on this plan for almost a year and a half. The defined contribution plan took over a year and a half to straighten out. This was done by the previous administration and had never been voted on by the Board of Selectmen nor vetted by the town pension attorney. To be clear, this plan was not IRS qualified and exposed the town greatly. Cindy, my assistant, worked very hard with our pension attorney and others to carefully fix this problem so we didn't get in trouble with the IRS, and we fixed it. So we secured an agreement with the region and Middlebury with regard to medical pooling. Since its inception, an agreement was discussed but never completed, and we've completed that. Analyzed and concluded in the very beginning that the proposed solar farm at the landfill would not be financially prudent move for the town. We recovered $325,000 shortfall due to a math error in the hazardous mitigation grant, applied and received a grant for a bus for the senior center, completed the Pomperaug Riverbank stabilization. Issues around the historic building grant were resolved and the project completed. We had that in the very beginning. What I thought would be a pretty simple thing was the ICE grant, purchase and sharing of a paver and a roller. That took much longer. I couldn't believe how long that would take, but we got it done. On the bids, the fire department tanker repairs, Bruce Brook Road Bridge was put out to bid after 20 plus years. Great. Personal property audits have been done, supplemental snow removal, consulting services for reappraisals and reevaluation, and we have gotten rid of some of our surplus equipment. We've taken care of vending in town parks, paramedic intercept services, Valentine Park pavilion improvements. We have just finished that up, and the new pavilion is in pretty good shape. We've saved money through rebidding our hauling services. The Valentine Pool liner will be replaced. That was a substantial project and should preserve our pool. We've worked on bids on construction equipment rental, backhoe replacement. Janie Pierce Pond has been out for requests for proposals, micro servicing, and tree removal and on-call engineering bids. On roads and bridges, we've extended the remaining service life of town roads by 43% by implementing lower cost methods of repair and maintenance. That was a very difficult time. We were in between our public works directors at that time, but we were able to achieve in the past 2 years a 43% increase in the average service life. Oak Tree Road Bridge closure and rebuilding completely under budget. Pomperaug River Bridge repair completed under budget. The Pomperaug River Bridge was a very challenging project. The contractor for the bridge made things very interesting. I want to say, but my administration held the line, and though taking longer than expected, we should be able to return about $500,000 back to the COG. It's about $500,000 under budget. And it was difficult to get that to happen. I was out there a great deal. We had a lot of meetings. For the record, I want to say that my assistant Cindy Harrison, her understanding and background in large construction projects has proven invaluable in this bridge coming under budget. She has proven again and again her value to my administration and to the town. To bring a bridge in under budget in today's environment is difficult, but we got that done. Establish a reserve for repair of, there's been a reserve established for the repair of bridges, as well as a policy for bridge evaluation. You also know that we're looking at, instead of letting bridges be rebuilt, we're looking to recondition them. And that's a new project that we'll be working on. Streetscape lighting is being evaluated, and reserve has been put in for repairs to be established. That is important that we straighten out our streetscape lighting. Spruce Brook Road work scheduled to begin March 1st. This is recognized as the oldest outstanding bridge project in the state of Connecticut. And frankly, the engineer who started this is ready to retire, and essentially has said he's waiting to get this done before he does. This list is only a small portion of the work that has been completed over the past 2 years by the Office of First Selectmen in conjunction with various departments. Although Connecticut as a whole is in less than stellar financial position, you can rest assured that the town of Southbury is watching your tax dollars and evaluating every purchase necessary. We have presented the town budget in a clear, easy-to-read format, which is now available on the town website. Over the past 2 years, I have met with countless citizens, civic groups, Eagle Scout candidates, to name a few. Lengthy discussions with the owners of the travel center and Peter Pan Bus Company resulted in the willingness to resume service at this location. That came in, and that has been a great service for the people in Southbury, is to get Peter Pan back at that location. Extensive work has been done on the potential of acquisition property for elderly housing at the training school. Although the funding for this project is on hold at the state, the town remains committed to our senior population and their needs. Our goals for the future include participation in various studies, completion of outstanding bridge work, continuation of road work to improve their remaining service life, evaluation of town departments for efficiencies, establishing stronger partnership with the leadership of Heritage Village, and further collaboration with Region 15. While we have accomplished much, we know there is much more work to be done. I look forward to the challenge. As always, my door is open, and I appreciate hearing from you with suggested constructive criticism. I remain committed to the townspeople, employees, and the health and vibrance of our great community. And I did this after the election. So anyway, that's my report. Next.
I'd like to make a motion to add to the agenda the changes to the structure of the strategic planning task force, please.
Second.
Okay. Made and seconded. All in favor? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Whenever
Carried.
you want it.
Okay. Whenever you want it.
Wherever you want it.
So let's move down. Everybody has their announcements and correspondence. And you have your reports. And then we'll go to the consent agenda. Any question on the consent agenda?
I move that it be approved.
I have a second.
Second?
Made and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? And it carries. Okay. We have minutes of December 4th, 2017, and December 7th, 2017. I will entertain a motion.
Motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Made and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? And it carries. Okay. Transfers. Do we have transfers? We have one transfer. We have a transfer to be approved by the board, motion.
Move that the small transfer be approved.
Thank you. Second? George?
Second?
Made and seconded. Any discussion on the transfer? It's $168. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Then it carries. Spruce Brook Road Bridge. Any question on the bridge and the bid?
For fear of being in agreement, there was no bid matrix provided.
what?
There was no bid sheet provided of the various bids. The bidding ordinance does require that there be like a spreadsheet provided that we look at with all the different bids on it that were evaluated and opened.
Do we happen to have that?
Cindy has something for you. There's one, and we have some spare copies.
Okay. For the record, the 10 people bid. The specification called for the lowest pre-qualified bidder. The low bid was from Stone Construction at $1,700,259.04. Unfortunately, they were not at that time pre-qualified, so we could not accept that bid as a pre-qualification. If we did, I was told by the state of Connecticut that we would risk federal money. So we were, by the state, indicated to us that the choice was to either A, throw out the bids, B, award the bid to, Dayton Construction at $1,807,314.
Who was the second bidder?
Second
lowest
low, was the lowest qualified bidder per the specification. It was unfortunate, but that was the bid specs, and there was nothing we could do other than throw it out. By throwing out the bid and rebidding it, you are uncertain of what would come in afterwards, what the bids would be, and this, by the way, is below the estimated cost of doing this project. But not only that, by rebidding it, you would miss the construction season, which would increase cost, and again, delay a 20-year bridge into the 21st year.
And the bid package clearly said pre-qualified.
Clearly pre-qualified bidders.
What was it exactly that wasn't done for them to be pre-qualified? Like
You have to be pre-qualified.
What was the process?
They were not.
They just didn't.
It's a number of letters that letters of recommendation and
I heard they were working on it, but they just didn't quite get it all done in time. But that doesn't
they were
matter.
not at the time
They're
of
not
the bid.
qualified, they're not qualified.
Not pre-qualified. So I've called the state and they said, that's your.
Has John worked with this company before?
Yes, actually Dayton has done, they did the bridge on 172. That's when they did it over the weekend, that complete project, and had it back open, I think in, forget how long, Justin, but that was pretty quick.
Mm-hmm.
And there are, I'm not to say the other firms are not reputable, but certainly well qualified to handle it. They're pre-qualified.
And Stone was the only one local to, the next one was Oxford, and they weren't even second or third, so.
Correct.
Okay.
So as far as concern about transparency, that's as transparent as you can get.
What was the budget originally for this?
Cindy, what was that budget, 2.2? The estimate?
Yeah.
The estimate from the engineers.
The original, we can look at it, because so this was the original budget that the engineers put together. And then I asked them, based on the fact that we have the final bid in, if they would redo the estimate, which they did. And actually, if you scroll down, Betsy, if line L is our cost share, our 20%, and we're gonna save about $63,000, $62.
So what, I mean, I see red lines and I see crossed out lines through numbers. What was the actual budget? Was it the red line number, or?
Well, they expected it to be 2.277.
Okay.
And then there's all the other things that happen, for a
2.4.
total cost.
2.4, wasn't it? 2.6.
0.6.
And what's the red?
So once we got Dayton's bid, I went back to the engineers and I said, can you redo this schedule? So the red is them redoing the schedule based on the bid. Because we knew we would have some cost savings based on the estimates.
But Dayton comes underneath the red numbers, you're saying?
Yeah.
Frankly, this is all good news.
Yeah, no, it's, I'm just curious as to how much under the budget we were.
And how, can you remind me how this project was being funded? What was was this a cost-sharing thing?
80-20.
80-20.
We're responsible for 20%.
And that's already budgeted, right?
Yes.
That's in this fiscal year.
Yep. We're good to go.
So the 2.6 was an estimate? Was just for us to,
That was the engineer's estimate of what they felt it would cost to build the bridge. So it sort of gives you a guideline, A, to know what your 20% is gonna be. And B, when the bids come in,
You have
know,
something
that's to
work with.
compare, to say, if they all came in at $5 million, then you got a problem.
okay,
So Dayton
thank you.
decided to engineer it a little differently? Is that why we have the
No,
lower
that's
numbers?
just their,
That's just what they think they can do it for.
maybe they can
Maybe
cost them
they-
less in one area and more in another, but, what they can get, what they feel they can get it done for at the end of the day. The good news is it's below, and our part of it is below, what the budget was.
Great.
So one thing I'll note is just as far as, because there were some comments tonight about the bid policy. So, and I have gone back and forth with Ed quite a bit on the bid policy, late last year. And I think up until now, I've no issues with the way we've done any bids. I've read through the bid policy about a dozen times. And we've always provided a letter from the person responsible, recommendation, it's been signed off on, all that's been done. The only thing different about tonight is there was no matrix provided, and I just ask in the future that does get provided on the website as it has in the past with all the bids we've done while we've been aboard. That's always been available.
Not a problem. Okay. Do we have a motion?
I move to accept the bid as presented.
Second that.
Made and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? And it carries. Thank you. The next is, we're working on an unfinished business, fracking waste ordinance. We've been pretty busy with a bunch of things. We do not, I don't believe we have any ordinances in yet to look over or suggested.
I think the woman provided a
Yeah,
format one, but we were gonna have that reviewed, right?
Yep.
So,
and we can do
it's
that.
ongoing.
It's ongoing. I don't think it's a eminent problem, but we're gonna work on it. All right, we're still on it.
So
Okay. I hate to bring you out in the cold.
What's
Well,
the, so she was here in the beginning of December and did the presentation, and my notes aren't clear on it, but I thought we'd ask for some additional information and some, she was gonna provide some statistics and maybe some other examples from other municipalities. I'm hearing nods. Is that nods that was not what we said we were gonna do, or is it nods that she hasn't provided it?
Not provided.
Okay. So, so maybe we can follow up with her to provide the information, and I assume
Can,
some people probably came tonight because they wanted to
Can
hear
Mark,
about
can
the
you-
so
can you talk to her and get her? Yeah.
Yes. What is it that you would like, more sample ordinances?
Whatever
I think
she.
she gave us
Yeah.
a sample, but we
Sample.
wanted her to go back to other towns and just.
Yeah, and give us what theirs were, and she seems to have that. I mean, I could
I think she's got 10 or 20.
have her send them to me. I'll contact her, but reach out to her first, right? Okay.
Thank you.
All right. New business, we have the proposed budget dates. Any,
None of those work for me. No, just
no,
Just kidding.
It's like, we all have a life, so it's kind of hard to,
Just
you know,
kidding.
I get it. Is it okay? Is there,
It's good.
is it all good?
I like the
Dates are
cutoff
good.
of 9.
Okay.
Are we gonna stick to that? Just kidding.
I highly doubt that's going to be the
Okay.
case.
Okay, so I would move to accept the proposed budget date.
Second.
Made and second, any discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that carries. Under new business, we can take up,
Yes, yes, please. Thank you so much for.
this would
considering
be new business, the strategic plan structure.
Yeah.
Okay,
So, back on April 20th, this board approved the structure of our committee, and we've had a couple of changes that I probably should have run by you earlier, and I'm running by you now, so that we can finalize the makeup of the task force. So, we initially asked Jennifer DeCorsek to be an alternate to the Board of Finance, but it was determined later that she would be more valuable as a voting member, so our task force voted to have her bumped up, and it was unanimous, so we did that. I'm gonna ask for you to approve this all at the end. I'm just gonna tell you what we've done so far. Inland Wetlands, we had our member step down, William Spencer. I know it's probably not protocol, Jason, I know you're rolling. He resigned, so Jen Murphy was the alternate, so we assumed she would bump up to regular member. And Donna Lesh was recommended from Inland, I don't know how we say it, Inland Wetlands as an alternate, so we took her on. Mary Warburger resigned, and we asked Catherine Smith to be an advisor in her stead. And Michelle Zomer has also been helpful, and we'd like her to remain as an advisor. So, that being said, I ask you to allow us to make Jennifer Tokarczyk a full member, make Jen Murphy a full member, and Donna Lesh an alternate, and Kathy Smith and Michelle Zomer as advisors.
can we, just because to get our head around this, can you send us the chart?
Oh, sure.
So we can have the chart that we approve now again.
Right, so we're gonna have our presentation next Thursday, and we wanted to present the task force as, we
Yeah.
wanted to honor everybody's service and not shortchange somebody. So we wanted to have the chart correct, which is why I'm asking you to please just approve this tonight, so that the chart can be correct next week, but I will send you a chart tomorrow.
Okay.
Send it
And
for
I
you.
think that's unbridled enthusiasm.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the changes as noted by Selectman Naylor and allow her to proceed with updating the chart for her presentation.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
No offense. Any other discussion on it? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And opposed, and it carries. Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome. Reports from liaisons. George?
There was no road study committee. There's been no Region 15 space study meeting for some time. I understand they're working with Malone and McBroom to try to finalize some recommendations. IT committee, we did have a meeting last month on the 18th of December. The meeting this month was canceled. The notes from December may be a bit obsolete, but I'll go through some of them. Process mapping is the thing I found most interesting. I know Jeff's been very involved with that. Just in hearing about it at the meeting, I thought it might be a good topic to present to the Board of Selectmen, just so folks could understand what's been going on, because it is quite interesting. I won't say any more about it here, but something for Jeff maybe to consider. The library fiber is running, and by all accounts, it's screaming. It just goes so much faster than the internet connections they had before. It actually gets up to 800, I guess, megabytes, whatever that means. So it's very fast anyway. I have written down here as January 15th as a target date for upgraded Wi-Fi in Town Hall, but I don't know if we've met that or not. I haven't heard.
Not based on my connection.
Doesn't seem like it's going.
It doesn't seem
My
like
Wi-Fi is
is
still working.
Not feeling it.
You're not feeling,
Not feeling
the love. Video surveillance at the police station is going well, and it's being looked at for public works. I saw a plan presented for about $8,800 worth of 4 cameras, and apparently it fits into existing budget parameters. But that's moving forward based on what I heard at the meeting. The fire department now has its own IT committee and its own bylaws for their IT committee. And apparently Ray cannot be their IT guy, but he will be their network guy. So I don't know anything about that. I heard about it, but that's what's going on with the fire
It gets a
people.
little complicated with the network and how this is run between the buildings, the network, so it's almost, he has to be involved in that network.
Ray has been meeting with GPS vehicle tracking vendors in an effort to install and perhaps monitor the vehicles we have on staff as to where they are, where they're going, and all that. Pretty standard stuff. I mean, most fleets have GPS monitoring these days. He's been working really hard on an FBI audit in conjunction with the police department. I won't get into any of that detail because it's way too complicated. I can't understand any of it anyway. And the topic came up about projects for the next budget. Ray was going to present some ideas at the last meeting, but the last meeting got canceled, so that's it for IT. As far as the streetscape lighting, that's been a lot of activities gone into that. It's been kind of under the radar. I mean, we've had meetings, discussions, we've talked to a lot of vendors. At this point, a proposal has gone forward through the Streetscape Committee, which doesn't meet very often. Just getting them together is a task. And it's also been approved by planning. So I think it's safe to discuss it in public at this point. What's probably going to happen is the lights will be replaced within the globes that exist with an upgrade kit. It's an LED upgrade kit from the same manufacturer that makes the globe. It's a company called Architectural, it's AAL, I can't remember what it is, Architectural something lighting. And it's going to cost around $550 per fixture. That's the proposal that's on the table for us to vote on, I guess, at some point.
What does that amount to overall?
Well, for 250 fixtures, we don't have enough money in the budget to do it all in 1 year. It's actually 241 is like the official number, but I think it's different than that. So
It gets a little, There's some lights that have been done. The movie theater has done both upgraded, what do you call it, George? The replacement LED, the upgrade, has been done on some of them, and some of them are new. And they look the same, whether they're upgraded. So the upgrade is, take the old thing out, you put the LED in, and
So they have two different types in front of the movie theater right now?
no. They're the specification for streetscape they have. They bought some new ones because they were new, and they also retrofitted the old ones out by the road. They upgrade them with this kit. You can't tell the difference. So, you know, the globes, the concern was the globes, and the globes are
So there's
clean.
something we could look at now.
Yeah,
Showing
you
us
can
what the
see these
proposal is
lights,
to do here.
exactly what they're gonna do. They're in front of the movie theater, and there's two of them that are near the gazebo, the bandstand, that have been in there for over 3 years. So it's essentially been a field-tested.
Is the streetscape spec for these lights? That's what.
There's a strong desire by the folks involved with making this decision to maintain the look of the light. We tested 2 lights from USA LED, and they just weren't popular with the folks. They have some issues, and they don't have quite the aesthetic appeal. And aesthetics it's a arbitrary thing. I mean, some people like the look of one thing, they don't like the look of another, but by and large, the reviewers didn't really like the USA LED appearance, even though they were a lower cost solution, and perhaps, although the final numbers aren't in, so we can't really say that. But that was looked at pretty hard, and it just didn't get through the review process.
Is this something, the 550, is that all in, or is that for the product that then needs to be?
There will be 2 RFPs. One is just to buy the retrofit upgrade kit, and the second RFP is for the work to install these kits. That will be done by non-town employees. Private contract bidders are invited, or will be invited to
You'd
bid
have to
the
be
work.
electrical contractor too.
We don't have electricians on the town staff.
So I mean, the estimate for the 550, is that just for the product? or
Just
is
for
there
the
gonna be-
product,
so then there's
exactly, yeah.
the cost of installation.
Based on work that's already been done, it looks like about 45 minutes, Jeff, to an hour. is kind of what
Electricians
the-
who worked on the other lights for the movie theater said it went pretty smooth, and they were getting them done like in 45 minutes to an hour. What the biggest problem they had was it was more cumbersome to use the bucket truck because you had to have police officers for traffic, where if you have a ladder, up the ladder, do your thing, off the sidewalk and move along.
I wanted to thank Scott, I see Scott's in the audience, for his help in doing, he did the 2 installs, the test installs at his cost, he didn't charge the town. I believe, I went into this thing as unbiased as possible. I didn't know, and I was driving Don and Hugh crazy because I pushed everything back to, okay, let's take a look at everything from the beginning. And they didn't want to do that. They already had pretty much made up their decision. And it's not a bad decision. Their minds were made up, though. But I forced them to go back and spend a lot of time considering, all kinds of options. We talked to all kinds of people and looked at many, many options. In the end, I think this is the right call to do the retrofit. It maintains the integrity of the fixtures that we have, the aesthetic appearance, performance, I believe will be equal to anything out there or better. But I do want to thank Scott. I know he put a lot of effort into it, and I'm sure he's disappointed, but I think this is the right way to go.
So, I'd just like for us as a board to take a step back on this process. Streetscape Committee, this elusive group of people who are great volunteers and have a wealth of knowledge for streetscape and its evolvement, somehow took or were charged with looking into this lighting situation for streetscape. Now, we put aside $50,000 last year to have a professional study done.
No. $50,000 was set aside for the streetscape repair. Because we knew over time were ideas that could cost $150,000. We knew that we didn't want to put it into the budget at $150,000 one year. So this board made the decision, the Board of Finance, to start reserving for a fix, a repair to these streetscape lights, because the current lights do not meet streetscape, the specification. And we have new lights that are going up at the movie theater. And that's another problem, is you have the new lights put up at the movie theater, you change the style of the lights. Are you gonna go in and change the movie theater lights also to match?
And there's also lights in front of the shopping center that are not town-owned that would, if we start changing all the lights, those lights would be different. Becomes a real issue with trying to maintain the consistency of the streetscape. And as far as technical background, I mean, the three people that did most of the work on it, Don, Hugh, and myself, were all pretty savvy as far as engineering and things of that nature.
But none of you are lighting experts, right?
I've become pretty close in doing the work.
I would say Don Antillo is a little
Don is
expert.
So my recollection of our budget discussions last year, when this came up, was that, yes, we were putting money aside in the reserve account for the repairs, but that a portion of that money that we were putting aside, a portion of the $50,000 was going to be used to pay for an analysis of what the correct approach would be to bring the lighting up to, what
Our own
everyone
regulations.
would like, up to our regulations, and what the best way to do that. And this very well may be the best way to do that.
Yeah, it may very well be.
But doesn't it make sense it couldn't cost all that much to have a lighting expert or someone go out there and do that. This has already been done once, right? Where the lights were changed and people aren't happy right now. So why don't we make sure that we're doing it properly? And I think it's a big burden to be placing on volunteers for us to then be relying on their professional judgment. I'm an attorney, right? I try to be very, very careful in never providing anything that comes close to a legal opinion here, because I'm a member of this board. And my views are what they are, that may or may not be guided by my professional practice. And I think having a certain level of independence might make sense.
I would say that the light meters that we're using are essentially the lighting experts that give you the data that you're looking for. I mean, you hold a light meter, you take the reading, and it either meets the spec or it doesn't.
They use the light meters to
Yeah,
measure.
we've had several light meters on this. It isn't that complicated. That I think, based on my knowledge of engineering and experience of electronics and all kinds of designs, this is simple stuff. I mean, I can't see paying somebody a lot of money to come in with a light meter and basically tell us the same things that we can read on our own.
Excuse me, sir.
Excuse me, yeah.
Thanks, Scott.
I just, I went into this thing as unbiased. I really didn't have an opinion one way or the other as to what was the right decision or not. I applied my best engineering abilities to this thing. I know Don has, and Hugh. Hugh is a pretty knowledgeable guy in lighting himself. I mean, he's been doing architectural work for a long time. It always involves lighting. And we all kind of came to the same agreement. So I think
I appreciate
it's a good
that.
one.
And you're all volunteers, and I really do. And Hugh and, like I said, Don are an invaluable asset to this town. But we had this issue raised last budget cycle by Ann Armino. She came in with a $250,000 endeavor by EDC to get the conversation started, as I recall. And so the conversation got started, and we put money aside. And the issue was immediately jumped on by those who have a preconceived notion of how streetscapes should be. There is no objectivity here. It is very, very subjective when it comes to to Hugh and Don when it, on streetscape and its lighting. They're very protective about it. We have regulations that I understand are not being met. We are not being dark sky compliant.
This-
The parking lot lights at the theater are. The ones in the front, my understanding is that they are not. I didn't go out there with a light meter. But this is why I'm saying we need third-party objectivity. And I'm asking for it because that's what we agreed to as a board last year.
I don't recall agreeing to that. I recall I volunteered to go in and work with these guys and try to figure it out.
You agreed to be the liaison to a streetscape committee that I can't find the origin of that streetscape
Yeah, well,
committee.
I can't either, to be honest
So,
with you.
well,
so.
and there's no minutes. So quite frankly, where's the transparency in that? I'm sorry. I'm throwing it out there because that's what I'm supposed to do.
And there's a streetscape specification that Planning Commission has that was for streetscape. The current lighting does not meet streetscape specifications. And we're gonna continue to fund through the budget, I hope to continue to fund this project to get it fixed. And again, as I said, if you come up with an alternative lighting piece, you're gonna have to change all the lighting, including that at the theater. It's supposed to match. So you still need the same design or look, I would assume. And this is a retro fit made for those particular globes and pieces. I mean, if you want to do a study and spend money on a study, I think we have enough information gathered to send it to, if that's what you want to spend it on the study. I mean, that's your,
It's streetscape.
this is a repair to the lights. This
Yeah,
is not a change of streetscape, or let's put new lights up, or let's, this is a repair to the current lights that were not correctly done.
I'm
Justin?
feeling awfully cautious and I'm not pointing a finger at anybody, but the town goofed last time we did this. And it's not an insignificant amount of money. So I am open to hearing from a third party, whether it's a study or just, however it could be approached, as long as it's a reasonable figure. The town
What
granted it.
exactly do you want a third party to tell you?
The town granted itself a waiver to have those lights. If you're a private business, you can't have those.
Right, they don't need zoning.
That's
and
what I'm saying.
They're not dark sky compliant totally.
That's what I'm saying.
Well, if you want to impose those kinds of limitations, then you're gonna have to get rid of all the lights and go with something else. And my personal
understand,
opinion
yeah.
is I like that look of the globe. I mean, if you want, go out and look at the USA LED fixtures and then just look at the globes and tell me which look you prefer. I mean, there's something really
did look
kind of
at 'em both.
special about that bright globe in the sky and the trees. I can see why people like it.
Yeah, I can see why people might like it, but, again, it's awfully subjective what you and I might like.
Well, yeah, exactly. But most of the people involved with the streetscape committee feel exactly the same way. And I came in at this with no preconceived ideas, and, I'm making
Are
this.
you working together, sir? Well, okay, nothing from the audience, thank you.
So, I
Are
mean,
they gonna come here and chat with us before they ask us to do this?
We can have Don come in and explain. We can have Don-
Do we have a formal request to vote on this tonight? No.
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 We're just giving an update of what we found and what,
Yeah, I was,
we're not,
I'm just gonna say I am concerned, because the town got it wrong last time, so.
absolutely, it was
and
wrong.
So
great efforts were made to not get it wrong this time.
So, I mean, and that's where I'm coming at it from too. I have the town did get it wrong last time because of the way it is now, right? And if I'm Don and Hugh, I don't want the town relying on me in making this decision. Maybe they want that, but I think an additional level of protection would be useful. And then if something went wrong next time, we can say, hey, We relied on this independent, objective, third-party source, and this is why we did what we did. And we have someone to look to. You know, if something goes wrong, we're not gonna go look to Don and Hugh, right? We don't wanna do that. And I don't know that we wanna put them in that position. And I'm not sure, I think as we all sit here today, we don't even know what it would cost to do what we're talking about. I can't imagine it's that significant. For
So
someone
why
to look at our regs and look at the lighting
don't
and
we
do some
have-
measurements and,
Well, we have Don and Hugh come in, explain what has been looked at, what they've done, and then if we feel we want to go, I mean, we're in no rush. We don't have the money in the budget to do it right now, anyway. This is just an update of what has been found. The Planning Commission is on board with this repair to the streets, to the lights. I think we're done paying for the lights that are there now. I think we're finally off that high rate of electricity that was paying for them. But we need to do something, and we said that the last budget, and we're gonna go into the next budget cycle, and we're gonna hopefully put more money away. What I'm hoping to do is also say, okay, we have an idea of what this could cost, because we had no idea before. We didn't have any numbers. So now we have an idea of something, and whether we wanna put another 50,000, or is it possible that you wanna go try, could we reach to get enough money in there for a solution, or do we wait till the next budget cycle? So I think that's kind of what we're doing here. So we can have Don and Hugh come in. We can even have Dolores come from planning and explain from the planning side, and I can ask them to be here at the next meeting to go through that, if you'd like.
And that would be great, and I understand there's been a process, but the process isn't documented. There isn't, we met with these 6 vendors, or we had this, if it's a committee, we should have minutes.
It wasn't a formal committee, it was just a bunch of people getting together and trying to figure out a
With the
path
best
to recommend,
intentions.
and that's what we did.
With the best intentions, but it's our streetscape, and it is such a big draw to our town.
Well, and that's one of the reasons why we wanted to maintain the aesthetic qualities that it has.
I mean, it is an award-winning
Yeah, I think that's a risk
project,
to
and part of it is the lights
change
that are there, and, you know,
I'm not sure that I'm not coming at, my comments aren't coming at it from the perspective of wanting to change it.
Right.
My comments are coming at it from the perspective of wanting a check on the process.
so I think,
Which I think is important when we're talking about it. I don't care how much this fix costs. It could cost peanuts or hundreds of thousands of dollars. We're talking about something significant to our town, no matter what the price ends up being, whether it's very low or very high. So I think a check on the process and making sure that we get it right once we're asked to approve the funding makes sense. That's where I'm coming at it from.
Well,
And
I'd like to say
I have a
that-
preference as to the globes too, but I think that's sort of secondary to first just trying to understand what it is that's being proposed, and maybe the way to go at it is go to an independent consultant and say, this is what's being proposed. This is what's out there. Here's our specs. Give us a report. Does this all mesh? Does this all make sense? Does this work? And perhaps that's a streamlined way to do it, but I do think it makes sense to have a check on it.
One of the things that kind of convinced me that this is a reasonable approach is that we've had these exact retrofit kits installed for over 3 years, and they've been running, and they've been doing fine. If you go out, and I attempted to do this, to look at every conceivable option that you can find, there's thousands.
We can't do that.
There's thousands of them. And
Let's try them all.
what's that?
Try them all now.
So let's try them all.
Yeah, that's what I was
No,
kind of
no,
heading
not
to, you know,
suggesting that by any means.
you know, after a while I thought, well, we've got something that works pretty well. People like the look. I'm not sure they're gonna like the look of a dark sky compliant
But then our
fixture.
regs need to change. Then our regs need to change.
Well,
Yeah,
these
I mean,
things
the other-
kind of, they grandfather in, they've been in there so long.
think
I
the
think the zoning
grandfather
regs
in.
came later.
The other thing is when the town says, do as I say, but not as I do, that's not the best seat to be in either.
no, but they're existing, and they pre-exist, and they were.
I understand
grandfathered.
grandfathering very well.
So, you know, to say you have to change them out because of that regulation, you know, and mismatch our streetscape.
We shouldn't do that,
We-
okay? We've
we-
been doing trial and error. Let's
We
do
should
it.
take our time and get it right.
That's right.
Well, that's what we did.
Well, the fact of the matter is, this retrofit meets the spec, is installed, is the same light. I get, and for some reason, the retro is cheaper than buying the new light. Don't ask me why, but it's cheaper to buy the light, the retro, which is it's the same thing. But then again, you don't always have to buy the globe. And that's one of the things about this, is the globes, there's not as many globes bad as, you know, some have holes in them. There's a physical hole in. One is shattered somehow.
Some are much older than others too. So.
Right, but they had good results in front of the movie theater, and that is the exact match to the streetscape lighting. So it meets the spec, it is the spec. It is the specification for streetscape.
We've had 2 of these running for, like I said, over 3 years, probably 4 years, and then there's another 20 or so in front of the movie theater that are the exact specification that we're talking about.
I mean, it is the spec.
Okay, well, fine. If we're going to have Hugh and Don come, I would also suggest that we have the local vendor who's an expert in lighting come and also be able to speak. He didn't get a chance to be on Streetscape Lighting Committee. So I don't think, all we can do is learn.
Well,
What's the harm in that?
2 of his products are on the street now.
His
Have you-
solutions are on the
Have
street
you gone to
right
look
now.
at them
No,
at all? or
some
have
of
you-
his solutions are on the street right now. As you indicated, there are thousands. So let's also give an opportunity to a third party to have his voice heard. I don't understand why we would not want that to happen.
He has been, we have spoken to Scott at length.
The three of you
Yeah,
in a room.
right,
I'm suggesting this board hear what he has to say.
that's fine.
Okay. Moving on.
Thank you.
Mr.
Justin.
Betty.
No, I'm up. EDC was supposed to meet on Wednesday. They postponed their meeting until next Wednesday due to the snowstorm that kind of didn't come. But IPOC, you guys saw the most recent update. It was in our packet. I think it's pretty transparent what happened there. Pretty standard changing of managers based on your standard factors, mergers, management changes, etc. So that's it for now.
Jason.
LEPC hasn't met since our last meeting, and I had a conflict the night of the library. Haven't had a chance to talk to Shirley Michaels yet, so I was not there. But their minutes show that there are rave reviews for the fiber, that they approved their gift fund budget, and that they had a full discussion as to whether or not to meet at their next meeting, which is Valentine's Day, and they all voted to do it. And have
They're
their
gonna have a meeting on
that night.
Valentine's Day?
Yeah.
So that,
That should not be allowed.
but I'll talk to Shirley about what else may have happened and can report next time.
Jennifer.
Senior Commission was supposed to meet yesterday, canceled due to lack of quorum. Arthur intimated what he had accomplished, and then Daniel Malloy, our governor, has undone and will be resurrected back in the end of January. Hopefully the issue of the Medicare savings plan, it has to deal with the Medicare savings plan, what is it, levels were reduced and that would greatly impact over 1,000 of our residents. So he's working to get that changed. But again, Senior Commission didn't meet, but you all have the director's report, so you know what's going on over there. Planning Commission did meet, and 390 Roxbury Road came back for another time. A modified plan, 2 buildings for apartments, 2 apartments in each of the buildings, 1,025 square feet per unit. And that public hearing is going to be February, I don't remember, February 20th, I think. And then, let me see. They are reviewing, Planning Commission is reviewing the regulations regarding signs. I guess the zoning commission, there's been that moratorium, the zoning commission has made some revisions, and Dolores made several pages of revisions as well, and so the commission is looking at that. The Strategic Planning Task Force, as I mentioned earlier, we're meeting next Thursday. The second presentation to the town is going to be done then, and you are all please encouraged and invited to come and provide feedback, and as well as all staff, and anybody is most welcome to attend, and that's 7 o'clock here. Thank you.
Selectman Rosen.
Awesome.
Way on business.
Any other business? Any other motion?
Motion to adjourn. It's a good one.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Okay.